came back with a slightly different voice. Hello, how can I help you? And sure enough, it was the deputy director of NASA. And he said, we've got this problem with the mission to Mars. And when you're next in Washington, would you come and visit us? Well, as it happened, my sister and brother-in-law live just south of Washington, D.C., so I was going to see them the next weekend. And I said, well, I'll be in Washington next weekend. Can we fix something up? So I went over and went down to the Langley NASA base, which is in Virginia. And they got this issue with trying to build a base station on the moon as a kind of interim jump-off point for going to Mars. This is a project that was ultimately cancelled by Barack Obama, but at this stage it was very live. And so we had this the full day workshop to try and solve this problem of how to build a base station on the moon. And obviously I'm a world expert in base stations on the moon.
Hi and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday the 7th of April 2024. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and today I've got the first part of another rerun. I'll try to promise anyway, in the next couple of weeks I will have a new interviewee. But for this week I've got David Hilson, so it won't disappoint, the Risk Doctor. Enjoy and speak soon. Hi, it's Nigel again. If you are listening to this, that means that you are listening to the old style of the podcast. You may like the old style of having it split into two pieces, but I know some of my listeners didn't. So what I've done, I have created the option for you to be able to listen to everything all in one go. You don't have to wait till next week. You could get it now. At the moment, it's just on Spotify. We'll be coming on Patreon as well. Costs you, was it £3 plus the VAT, I think it is, over a month, and that means you get the whole thing all in one go. So the other advantage, that'll be coming out on a Sunday. This one you will notice has just come out on Monday. Won't make a big difference really, but there you go, you've got it. You've got that choice. Helps me invest in better equipment and maybe a few other bonus items going forward. So if you can spare essentially a cup of coffee once a month, and you get the benefit of getting it earlier and getting it all together. So pop along to Spotify, have a look in there where it is, and there'll be a little lock sign against one called number 132/133, John Henney, the voice coach. That's the combined one, and you should be able to click on there, do what Spotify tells you to do to register and put all your payments in. Yeah, that's it. And the only thing, if you have done that and you do it, I don't know if I get details on it yet. It's very new. So send me ping me a message through whatever medium you can get hold of me, and you'll get a mention on the show. So again, thanks very much, and let you carry on with the show. Cheers now. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreasy.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. Today, I'd like to welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast, Dr. David Hilson, the Risk Doctor. He's an international thought leader in risk management with a global reputation as an excellent speaker and an award-winning author. Countless individuals, teams, and organizations have benefited from his blend of innovative insights with practical application presented in an accessible style that combines clarity with humor. He also shares his insights regularly through books, papers, and articles, as well as a regular series of Risk Doctor briefings. David's speaking and writing is guided by the Risk Doctor motto of understand profoundly so you can explain simply. And David has been active and tireless advocate of risk management over three decades. His many contributions have moved the risk discipline forward in both thinking and practice, ranging from the inclusion of opportunities in the risk process to groundbreaking work on risk attitudes and risk appetite. He's developed the risk breakdown structure to provide a framework for risk processes, risk meta-language to ensure accurate risk descriptions, defined response strategies for focusing actions, maturity model frameworks for benchmarking and risk management capability, and criteria for defining a professional approach to risk management, the Risk Management Professionalism Manifesto. He's been recognized for a range of awards, and I take a big breath here, including PMI David I. Cleland PM Literature Award, PMI Eric Jennett Project Management Excellence Award, CMI Chartered Fellow Award, IRM Risk Personality of the Year Award, Project Management Institute Fellow Award, Honorary Fellow of the Association for Project Management, RSA Fellow, National PM Association of Taiwan Honorary Advisory in Risk, Fellow of the Institute of Risk Management, PMI Distinguished Contribution Award, PMI European Congress Palme d'Or Award for Best Paper, and PMI Risk SIG Significant Contribution Award. And breathe. Welcome to the show, David.
Wow, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, Nigel, and I hadn't realised I'd done so much. It's all been real fun.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you know something about risk.
Well, that's all I know. I'm afraid I'm a very boring person, really. But, risk management is really exciting and real fun. So it's not such a bad thing to be an expert in.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So I'd like to find out a bit about behind the background of what makes David Hilson, the Risk Doctor, tick. So going right back to the beginning, when I imagine there were some risk management strategies applied at the birth of David Hilson. Where was that and what happened there?
Ah, yes, the 6th floor of University College Hospital in Tottenham Court Road in London, yes. And I was born at an early age. I wanted to be close to my mother while she was in hospital, all those usual corny jokes. 1955, when I was born, I was nameless because my parents had decided that I was going to be Martin when I was born. I took one look at me and my mother said, "He's not a Martin." And then they had to sort of rethink everything. So David came a couple of days later, and I'm quite glad about that.
Yeah. Well, you get used to your name, don't you, as well? So where is it you're living now? Are you still in the London area, or?
No, I was born in North London, so I'm a Spurs fan. So that's
right.
a good thing. Sorry about that to all the other. You have to make your choices early on. I coming home from school at about the age of 8, I met a group of boys on the corner of a street who blocked my path and said, "So, Spurs or Arsenal?" And I knew one of the answers was wrong. I didn't know which one. So I just picked the first one and I said Spurs. And I got beaten up and chased up the road. So I felt after that early start, I ought to be committed to Spurs. And so I've been a lifelong follower, not hugely committed, but my mother did teach Danny Blanchflower at one stage. You won't know who he is.
I know the name Danny Blanchflower.
There you go. Yeah. So anyway, North London until I went to university at the age of 17, and then about 35 years ago settled in Petersfield in Hampshire, which is a lovely sort of rural spot, an hour from London, an hour from each of Heathrow and Gatwick, which suits me well, as you'll perhaps discover later on. and out in the countryside within 10 minutes of our house. So it's a lovely place to be.
Brilliant. And family, you say us.
Yes, I married 40 years ago last year. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know how that happened. Just one day at a time, I guess. Still more in love than we were when we started. And we have two lovely daughters who are 38 and 36, both married, and one granddaughter. So all good.
Excellent.
I seem to have a life full of women, actually. I mean, a wife and two daughters, and my father died young. So when my first son-in-law came along, I was absolutely delighted. Somebody who understood the offside rule and could see underneath the bonnet of a car without collapsing.
Yeah, he wasn't an Arsenal fan, was he?
No, he was a rugby player, a Cardiff rugby player. So he was kind of uncommitted when it came to soccer.
Oh, he was all right. He was approvable then.
That'll do. Yeah, he passed the handshake test as well.
You'll have to tell us about that handshake test.
The handshake test, yes. Well, you can tell a lot by people about people from the way they shake hands. And so I had told my daughters that any potential lad that they brought home would have to pass the handshake test, but I didn't tell them the rules. And so they told their lads when they were about to bring some poor sap home, I'm afraid my dad's gonna shake hands, but you've got to pass the test, and we can't tell you how to pass it. So the guys kind of came in fear and trembling, and some of them, went in too hard, and some of them gave up altogether. And so it's a bit. I can't give away the secret now.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe offline, I can use it for my daughters in the future.
Exactly.
So you said you grew up in London.
Not just London, in North London.
In North London. It does matter, does it?
Okay. Oh yeah.
That's me being a country.
Don't go across the river, And we have multiple identities. I'm British, but I'm English. I'm English, but I'm a Southerner. I'm a Southerner, but I'm a Londoner. I'm a Londoner, but I'm a North Londoner. I'm a North Londoner, but I'm a Spurs supporter. And each of those kind of nested identities, means something significant in a particular context.
Yeah, we all have our tribes, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes they cross, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So you grew up in North London.
Absolutely.
So when you were growing up there, obviously, maybe we'll cover it a little bit in what the job of a risk doctor is, and obviously we talked about this. I'm not sure whether traditionally when I've talked to people on these, it's generally about how they got into project management and things like that. And obviously you're in the project management arena. But what did you want to be when you were running away or getting beaten up by those wonderful Arsenal supporters?
Well, an astronaut, of course. I mean, all boys wanted to. We just had the moon landing. Werner von Braun was my hero, that interesting German chap who escaped the Nazis and went to America.
Yeah.
I was determined to be an astronaut. That was my goal.
So so it wasn't to be involved with project management at all?
With what? Who knew what project management was in those days? No, it never has really been to be involved in project management. For me, the world of projects is incidental. It's a reasonable domain to play in, but it's not my only interest by any means.
Yeah, fair enough. So, as you grew up there in North London and moved on to university, you said when you were about 17. So, what was it? Was that to take you forwards to that astronaut, or did you move to a different direction then?
I'm afraid that never came off. So I had another option. I was a musician, actually. From the age of 10, I started to play the tuba, which was bigger than me, and that was quite an interesting experience too. And I won a scholarship for 5 years to Trinity College of Music in London, which is one of the main 5 Royal Colleges, studying big brass. So it was trombones and tubas. And when I came to 16, sort of age to choose A-levels, I was interested in science and I was interested in music. And my careers teacher said, "How many successful tuba players are there in the country?" And I said, "Well, I guess about 3. "And how many successful scientists are there in the country?" And I said, "I don't know, but it's more than 3. And he said, "Well, if you follow music as a career, you'll be busking in the subways. If you follow science as a career, you'll never be out of work. So that's what you should do. And you can't do science as a hobby. You can do music as a hobby. So why don't you just be a scientist and leave your music as a hobby. So I did that, and occasionally I've regretted it. I sometimes wonder if I know I would never have been the best tuba player in the world or the best trombonist, but it might have been fun to just take it a bit further. But when I went to university, it was to follow a degree in biochemistry.
Ah, right. So do you still play the tuba or the trombone?
Well, I don't. I have them in the loft, and now while I was at music college, I taught myself to play the piano because we had to do composition and harmony and counterpoint and all those sorts of things, which you can't really do on a tuba.
Right.
So I taught myself to play the piano, and after a while, I realized that was a lot more versatile than big brass instruments. So at the age of about 25, I transitioned into keyboards. This was the beginning of the days of synthesizers, and so now I play keyboard in various groupings of different sorts. And I still play a lot every week.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
So biochemistry. Tell me about that.
Well,
tell me about your degree in that.
Well, you'll discover as we go on that I seem to have done things in decades. So I had 10 years as a biochemist.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what the others were? I can give you.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
My life so far in decades. I had about 10 years in biochemistry, then 10 years for a big defense contractor working as a risk management consultant, another 10 years with 2 small risk management consultancies, then another 10 years launching the Risk Doctor partnership, and then the last 5 years or so I've been trying to retire. And that will probably take me 10 years as well. So if you start at about the age of sort of 20 to 30 biochemistry, 30 to 40 with this company, 40 to 50 with the 2 smaller companies, 50 to 60 with the Risk Doctor partnership, and I'm now 64, halfway through my next decade of trying to retire.
Wow.
But biochemistry was fascinating. I specialized in protein chemistry. I did some interesting research that turned out to be the basis of genetic engineering. I was focusing on how proteins fold and unfold and how you control the shape of a protein in order to make it work. I developed a way of unfolding proteins that were wrongly shaped and putting them back together in the right order, and then went on to do the same sort of thing with proteins that control the expression of chromosomes, of genes. And so for about 5 years, I was an expert in the sorts of things that are now basic genetic engineering.
So
you didn't expect that, did you?
No, I didn't. Absolutely, you threw me completely.
That's
there.
where the doctor came from. My first doctorate is in biochemistry.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that the doctorate, and it's kind of one of those things of you sit there thinking. I have a colleague who's a technical architect, and his degree was in biochemistry, and just hearing you talk about the biochemistry there reminded me of him, because one day we touched on it, and he started talking to me about when you got salt going between cells. I can't remember what it's called, and he was describing that process to me, and it was like he kind of sounded like a different person talking about something else. It was really interesting.
Well, one of the things I've been very passionate and committed to the thing in front of me. Yeah. So I gave everything into biochemistry, into my research and my publications, and was completely committed to that as if it was going to be my life, and then it didn't turn out to be. But I did really enjoy it while I was doing it, and made a small difference. So that was good.
So how did that jump from the biochemist doctor working out how to make Dolly the sheep, jump from there to working with risks within a defence organisation? How was that? What was that transition?
Well, you see, my careers officer at school was wrong. And he said,
they wanted someone to play the tuba.
Yeah, no? Yeah. He said, if you follow science, you'll never be out of work. And
right, that's it.
So I did 4 years as a postdoctoral research fellow at what was then Portsmouth Polytechnic in the biophysics department. And there was a rule in those days, this is the early 80s, that you could only have a position renewed twice in the same institution. because they wanted to spread the expertise around between different academic institutions. So after 2 renewals, you had to move to a different place.
Right.
And by that time, I was married. We had a couple of children. We settled our life in Petersfield, just 15 miles north of Portsmouth, and didn't want to move. So I could not continue. I couldn't work in Portsmouth anymore. I tried Southampton and Guildford and other places, and nothing worked out. And so I was out of work for 5 months. And then this job came up with a defence company that used to exist called Ferranti, which isn't there anymore, because they didn't manage their risks very well. And that's another story.
So tell us some more.
Well, I moved to Ferranti in, 93. And is that right? Yes, I think it was about 93. And around that time, just a little before that, the Ministry of Defence issued a requirement, an instruction to all defence contractors that they would use formal risk management on all future contracts. And the MOD had heard about this from the oil and gas sector and decided that it sounded interesting and useful. So they mandated it from the chief scientific advisor. And so we had to do it, and nobody knew what it was, including the MOD, actually. So my company looked around for some poor unemployed or person who wasn't doing so much, came across me and said, look, Kilson, go and find out what risk management is and do it. So that was great. And I got started following some of the folks in the oil and gas sector, some of the academics, got to know some people in the field, and developed an approach to risk management that we started using on one troubled project, which was spent twice the money, was 1.5 times late, and had no plan to completion. And so we applied this new risk management thing, and it worked, and we got the project through to complete under renegotiated terms. Everybody was very pleased. I got the job of spreading risk management through the company to all our projects. And then after a few years, and we got a small team around me, after a few years, I was asked to advise the board on strategic risk. And that's when the company made its biggest mistake, really, which was taking over an American company who had a lot of secret contracts with the Pentagon. So secret that they couldn't reveal any of the details to our due diligence team. And so we trusted them, went ahead, bought them for $1 million, and it all turned out to be a big fraud, and there was nothing. I spotted this. I asked the question. The chief exec said, don't worry, you're worrying about nothing. I've done this before. So I resigned. And 6 months later, the company was in such trouble that it went under, got sold to Marconi, bits of it was sold to British Aerospace, and Ferranti doesn't exist anymore. The guys in the States, the directors of the company who we bought, went to prison for 20 years each. And it was a big story of unmanaged risk. But as often happens, actually, the risk guys do see these things coming and pipe up. And are often not listened to. That's what happened with RBS and HBOS and some of those other bearings and so on. The risk people knew, and we said, and we weren't listened to. So,
yeah, I suppose it's that there's a risk here. Are you going to treat it right? And if some people just look at it and go, "Don't worry, we'll deal with that." It's that thing, isn't it? It's that, and that my sort of view of the likelihood ones and the scale things is people sitting there going, well, it's not likely, but the scale of what that thing can be, doesn't matter how likely it is, you've got to do something about it sometimes, haven't you?
Exactly.
Because it can, if it's, as you say, with something like that can take down a whole business. So, why would you take that risk without putting some controls in place?
That's right. Yeah. So and I'm sure they did put, there was some due diligence. We had PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we sued them for our money back, and they gave us our money back, but it didn't give us our business back. So
no, that's the thing. You can't getting fees back for paying someone is nothing compared to the reputational damage and the business damage that these things can make, is it?
Exactly.
So you said there that when you were asked to look at the risk stuff at Ferranti originally, was that you you were already there, and they were looking for someone to do that. So what were you doing there? Because again, it's kind of just trying to join those dots, because you were doing your biochemistry. Your role wasn't there. Obviously, a highly educated person, so going in different roles, it's understandable. I was just curious to know, what were you actually doing prior to doing that risk work within Ferranti?
I took on a job in the staff education team, which was the sort of internal training house.
All right.
And we had about 6 or 8 lecturers, and they offered me this job, or interviewed me for this job, and I said, look, I don't know the first thing about computer systems or defence or the Navy or any of this stuff. They said, yeah, but you know how to communicate, and you know how to take complex ideas and make them understandable. They said it's easier to find a good communicator and teach them about computers than to find a good engineer and teach them how to communicate. So I went in literally knowing nothing about the subject. After about 2 weeks of induction, I did my first 3-day training course for computer programmers. And it was a question of saying something in the morning, asking all the questions, getting all the questions asked. I said, oh, we'll cover that after lunch. Over lunch, going back to the office and saying, what's this, and doing all my sort of swatting up, getting some answers from the rest of the team, and going back and just blagging it, oh yes, of course I knew all about that anyway. And it was a great way for me to learn, I ended up being head of the staff education group. Nice. And then from there, they took me on into this risk role.
Yeah, right. So it kind of stilled you for doing what you've done later on with that sort of a lot of your speaking engagements and education stuff as well, I suppose.
Yeah, yes. I always like to talk. Might have noticed.
No, not noticed at all. Not noticed. I've just seen that you've spoken a lot of places.
Yeah. But the risk thing was really just being in the right place at the right time, or it was purely by chance that this opportunity came along and they alighted on me as a suitable candidate, and I took to it and never looked back, really.
Cool.
So that was about 1980. Actually, I got my timing wrong. I must have gone to Ferranti at about 84, because this was about 86.
All right. So going into that and doing that risk sort of stuff is what a question I normally ask with the PMs is what their first project they remembered that they delivered, and quite often people are kind of going, well, I didn't realize it was a project, or I didn't realize I was managing it, kind of thing. But obviously with your kind of role, it was, when did you realize that you were or the first time you thought, hang on, this is involved with the project management industry? Obviously, you're doing the risk stuff. Was it in those first days of Ferranti and that first project you were talking about?
Yes, the one which was hugely troubled. And obviously, I had to work very closely with the project manager and the project management office. We had each major project had its own project office. And so the risk role sat within that. So I was more or less embedded into the project for, I guess, about 18 months, and saw project management, up close and personal.
Yeah.
It was very sort of old technology in those days, and we had a 2000 activity on Arrow network that we printed out on huge rolls of A0 paper and wallpapered the project office with it in about 6-point print. So you need a magnifying glass to see it. And then we had to try and identify risks on this 2000 activity network and work out when things would finish, and the impact on the critical path and all that stuff, and earned value was part of it as well. So I began to see some of the interactions, the close interaction between risk management and projects, and when we actually managed to renegotiate a plan to completion and then stick to it, then I saw that the risk thing really worked. It really made a contribution.
So do you see risk management as a discipline within the project management arena, or do you see it as a complementary? Because obviously most of the PM box, the APM box, all of those things, we have a risk management section, but then I suppose we have a procurement management section, and procurement is a subset as well. Am I answering my own question there?
Well, I mean, I think yes and no. Clearly, risk management has a role within projects, but I think it has a role within everything that's important. So if you think about corporate strategy, or about running programs, or about innovation, research and development, If you think about sort of personal issues like managing your career or bringing up a family, or investing for your pension, if you think about bigger issues like climate change or demographics or pandemics or technological breakthrough, all of these things are affected by uncertainty. And so I see risk management as a life skill, which actually can be applied in pretty much any context where we have things that are uncertain and important, which is most things, or most things that matter. And so in the world of projects, the key is to recognize that risk is always and only defined in terms of objectives. And so one of my early sort of breakthroughs or insights was to come to a 3-word definition of risk, which has actually guided my thinking and practice for the last 30 odd years. And that's to say that risk is uncertainty that matters. So every risk is uncertain, but not all uncertainties are risks. So out of the billions of uncertainties in the world, which ones do we take account of? Do we need to prepare for and think about and respond to and report on? And we want to report on the uncertainties that matter, and we don't want to bother about the uncertainties that don't matter. And fortunately, out of billions of uncertainties in the world, most of them don't matter. So then how do you know what matters? And in the world of projects, what matters is achieving our objectives. So a risk is then defined as any uncertainty that, if it occurs, would affect achievement of project objectives. And once you've got that, then you can apply the same principle to anything. So what is a reputation risk? A reputation risk is any uncertainty that, if it occurs, will affect our reputation. Or a safety risk is any uncertainty that, if it occurs, would affect our safety performance. And a personal risk is any uncertainty that, if it occurs, would affect my personal objectives. So we can then get this kind of layered view of risk just from those 3 words. And then out of uncertainty that matters, you get the question, well, how big is a risk? And you've got 2 dimensions. How uncertain is it? And how much does it matter? And then we might talk about probability as a measure of uncertainty and impact as a measure of how much it matters. Mm-hmm. So, all sorts of things came out of those 3 simple words. And it was one of my early insights, which has really shaped my thinking and writing from then on.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because there were one of the things that what you said there about risk across things is that we all manage risks all the time, don't we?
Of course, we wouldn't be here if we didn't.
Exactly, and that's the point, isn't it?
Crossing the road and all those things, health vaccinations, insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah, and you make assessments, but not necessarily with something about, right, how uncertain is this? How does it matter? And that's we do it subconsciously. I was listening to a conversation today about mathematics, and how the fact that everyone does complex mathematics all the time, but you just don't think about the fact that you're doing complex mathematics until someone says, right, we're going to do a complex mathematics problem. The analogy they had was a basketball player is doing some incredibly complicated mathematic calculations by throwing a ball into a net. But they don't realize they're doing it necessarily. And if you ask them to work out what they were doing on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, they wouldn't be able to do it. And I suppose it's the same with risk management that we do, as you say, every day as you're walking around or crossing the road.
It is
making those judgments, aren't you?
But what was interesting when we started to introduce risk management into Ferranti, we had some really skilled project managers. And a lot of them said, look, I don't need a formal process or techniques or anything to identify risk. I do it all the time. It's just my day job is to think about what might happen and to stop the bad things happening or make them less bad or protect ourselves and to achieve my goals. And so, and they were right. They did do that and they were successful. And then the question is, how do we make everybody the same as the best project managers? We can't all have the same sort of level of experience or expertise or the same things happen to us. And the role of process is to capture the best practice of people who have done it before intuitively and make that available to everybody else. So what we're saying is, I say there are 6 questions that shape the risk management process, which any sensible person will ask. So what am I trying to achieve? What could affect me? Which are the big ones? What shall I do about it? When I did it work? And then what's changed? And that's just a natural set of questions. But if you think about it in a formal way, it becomes the risk process. So what am I trying to do? That's what am I trying to achieve is objective setting.
Yeah.
What might affect me? Identifying risks, which are the big ones, prioritization. What should I do about it? Response planning. When I've implemented that, did it work? Risk reviews. And then what's changed? Risk updates. I mean, it's natural, normal. But what we do is we take the wisdom that's embedded in the old and bold people who have been doing it for years intuitively, and we bring that out and capture it in a process that anybody can follow, and then we all become as good as the best, not because we've had the years of experience, but because we're following a process that's based on their wisdom.
Another great sponsor of the show comes in the form of AirManual. AirManual is it's a tool for documenting process, which and best practices. It's a company formed by one of my interviewees, Alexis Kingsbury. Essentially, and I kind of summarised why my view of where we see documentation, a lot of my experience has been people will document something, a process, they'll put it in a Visio diagram that gets loaded onto a SharePoint site or something similar, and then a bunch of that. So then once that diagram's been shared with senior management, they're happy they have a process in the business. But then the detailed procedures underneath it might be in Word documents, just poorly kept and not linked easily and not updated. And what AirManual does, it allows you to put in it's a tool for doing this kind of thing. You whack it in, the service in there, get in there, put in your process, your flow, and you build it down to as low a level of detail, even to the point of checklists where people can check off they've done it. So it creates that guided checklists, easy to create, easy to maintain, and all in one place. And no one's kind of rooting around to find the SharePoint, and then when you change to new SharePoint services and all that stuff, it's all there. So if you pop along to nigelcreaser.com/airmanual, there's a bit more detail there and a link there to click on to go and get. I think they offer a trial and things like that. So it's something that I think can easily reduce the amount of errors, rework, etc. within our organisation. So take a look. Well, I know you'll have enjoyed that episode with David, and come back next week, get the second part, and speak to you soon. Look after yourself. Bye. Hope you enjoyed that. But you're thinking, I wonder what the next bit's going to be. Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? You heard at the beginning of the show where I said there's a way around that. So if you're really itching and you want to hear the next bit of this show, jump down to Patreon, have a look, find the one that's got a little lock on it, click on it, and you'll be able to get the second half along with the first half all together. And you won't get this annoying bit or the annoying bit at the beginning that I just done as well. So, yeah, give it a go. It's only a price of a coffee. Cheers. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this. You're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listened to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nigel out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast, send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. if you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, in print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. My latest, the latest affiliate that I've got on the show now is Riverside. I use Riverside to do my interviews, Riverside FM. It kind of offers you a whole, if you like, micro studio management producer tooling and goes beyond that. Has a really good free layer. And I've been using it for a while now. I find it really good. When I've had issues, even though I'm not on one of the higher paid levels, the support has been quick, responsive and of high quality, and people keen to help me. The organisation seems really good. The product seems really intuitive. And quality is really good as well. And it's a clever way of doing it is when you're recording through your browsers, so you've not got loads of desktop resources being used compared to some other products that I've used. And what they also do is they stream a lower quality version of it up onto as you're doing the interview, so you're not burning bandwidth while you're doing the interview and potentially impacting on the quality of the conversation. And then at the end, it uploads it, the higher quality from your browser. It's just a really good way of doing it. So if you are thinking of doing a podcast and know someone who's doing a podcast, I would recommend using this tool. I found it really good. Best of the tools that I've tried using to date. And you can get that at nigelcreaser.com/riverside, and that will redirect you to my kickback page on their site, and there I will get a little kickback from them. So take a look. Thanks. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.